Anthony with the pump fake and one dribble inside to the long two, and he makes it. That's been his game his whole career. But look at him smiling. We go, my bad. The long two.
Welcome to another episode of The Long Two. I am Pete Rogers. He is Natty Wallach, and we are a Carmelo Anthony podcast, but occasionally talk fantasy basketball. Natty, how you doing this week?
I am well. Howdy and what's up? How are you?
I am good. I'm excited to just kind of talk basketball. We don't really have an agenda for the pod. We just wanted to kind of pop on and discuss how things have been in the bubble because it's been a lot is happening. We've seen, I know these games kind of, we initially, obviously there's some seeding things that we're going to, that we're planning to play out and all that jazz. But for the most part, I feel like there wasn't, there wasn't like a whole bunch that maybe could have happened in this bubble. But I feel like we've seen a lot of things. There's a lot of talking points that have emerged from the first week of the NBA bubble so far.
I agree. And I think that the number one question on everyone's minds was, is this going to work? And how is it going to work? And will it be safe? And now that that seems to be in the affirmative, that yes,
yet again,
this is working,
another round of tests with no positives.
And knock wood, let's hope this keeps going. It's a good example for everyone. This shows that it can work. Obviously, we already know that since it has worked in other spots in the world. But this is good. The NBA is spending money to do this. And now that that question is sort of past us, or at least it's been answered for the nonce, now we're sort of looking at the actual teams and what's actually going on. And you're totally right that the seeding, like, who cares that the Wizards are playing? Are you kidding me?
Right. The Wizards, the fact that the Wizards are like losing playoff seeding to teams that aren't in the bubble just further proves that they should not have been in the bubble to begin with.
Like, they're worse than they
are
were
now
during
lower
the regular
seeded
season.
Right. They are lower seeded than the Hornets right now, even though the Hornets aren't there.
Right. Yeah, the Hornets have a better win percentage than the Wizards. But, I mean, we've sort of known this already. It's just that seeing it in action just sort of shows you like, wow, this is so fucking stupid. But on the other hand, in the West, all of those teams, well, I mean, Sacramento had a good game today. And Memphis has lost 3J and doesn't really look
which
like
is
a real
Memphis.
team
Memphis
right
is kind of holding on to that 8th seed for Memphis is going to be kind of tough with the Trailblazers playing the way they are.
Yeah, Memphis is 32-37 and Portland is 31-38. And Memphis looks like a young team in the playoffs. Like, they just aren't there yet. And now that they've lost their second best player, I guess we'll say, it just doesn't look like they have any real shot. Like, I would sort of be surprised if they hang on. It seems like Portland and Jesus Christ, maybe these Phoenix Suns are really gunning for that spot. Yeah.
I do want to talk the West because I think that's the most exciting, obviously, conference to talk about given how many players, how many teams are there for the 8. But before we do that, I do want to touch on, I do feel like probably the biggest news right now in the bubble has to do with the Sixers and Ben Simmons, since he
agenda, huh, Pete?
Dislocated his kneecap. I'm just saying.
Let's talk basketball. So these Sixers.
When one of the premier players in the bubble gets injured, and an injury that, I saw Kevin O'Connor for the Ringer tweet this out. Like, this is what Andrew Bynum had, and it took Andrew Bynum, I think he said 10 weeks to recover from this. So it's not exactly like a great thing for the Sixers, who were already kind of struggling in the bubble to figure out, what their team is with this kind of new starting lineup with Shake thrown in at the point guard position.
Yeah, so Ben Simmons' knee came off. That's basically what that What those science words mean.
I know Dr. Pete is supposed to be the unbiased, non-Celtic person. Natty's just actually being a doctor right now, and is
like
telling us
his fucking knee came off
term.
the rest of his body. It's crazy.
The scientific term is his fucking knee came off his body.
But when I looked this up to like you and everybody else, like, oh, who else has had these and what's the recovery time? I also learned that once you have this injury, it's more likely to happen again just because of the scarring and the thinning of some of the tendons, I suppose. And that's not great because he already had some back issues earlier this year. So that sucks. Losing a player of Ben Simmons' caliber is terrible. So Ben Simmons in the bubble was averaging 11 points, 7 rebounds, and 4 dimes. Only 7 players were equaling or exceeding those averages during the regular season pre-COVID. So that's the sort of player we're talking about. He is absolutely one of the best players in the NBA. The fact that the geometry of the Sixers team has never made sense sort of diminishes how good Simmons is.
Totally.
Like if he was on a different team, he'd be a much bigger star, I think.
Well, and they've started to try to do that with Shake Milton in the starting lineup. Like they've taken Ben and played him more at like the 4 or, and utilized his size and quickness there as opposed to having him be the one playing him at the 1. And so you've seen that, like, hopefully that they were hoping that shakeup would kind of help pun intended, nice. Would help kind of like figure out the kinks that the Sixers have had with Simmons and Embiid since those two have shared a court together.
The problem with Philadelphia is that they have lacked shooting the entire time this experiment has gone on.
You know who they would have really helped them?
JJ Redick and Jimmy Butler. Yeah, that's the thing. This team, their guards, they lack talent. If you don't consider Ben Simmons a guard, if you consider him a point forward, their backcourt is pretty unimpressive. And this is the problem that Philly's going to have. Like their starting lineup now with Simmons out is probably going to be something like Shake at the point, Josh Richardson at the 2, Tobias at the 4, and Embiid at the 5, because Horford and Embiid together just doesn't
you can't play those
really help together. You. Yeah, it just hasn't gone well. Or at least it doesn't seem to have gone well. Maybe this will change things. Who knows? So then the last spot has to be a wing spot, and it's going to be what? Furkan Korkmaz, Matisse Thybulle. Maybe you put another.
Burks.
Well, yeah, I mean, like you could have Jay Rich play the wing, and then put like Raul Neto or Alec Burks, try to get a little bit more playmaking. But the thing is, like, Thybulle is a defensive guard, and he's not a distributor. They just don't have the firepower from the backcourt that they did last year when it seemed like they were a pretty successful team. So Philly is now in a bind because while they didn't lose a shooter, they lost the second most important piece of their team. So now Embiid has to do even more. He's been doing a lot already. This might actually help him do more. If they're going to go 1 in, 4 out and just try to surround Embiid with quote-unquote shooters, that might help him and it might help the team. But like this is an extremely thin team right now, unless Tobias Harris rises up to the occasion. If he can be like a real like scorer like he was on the Clippers,
a max contract guy.
Yeah. And we can hate on it all we want, but really, Josh Richardson didn't live up to expectations this year.
Yeah,
he has been shooting well in the bubble though, so maybe this will help him too. Like I can see a path ahead for the Sixers, but it's obviously way more difficult now. Also because Ben Simmons, his defense is ultra important to that team as well. So who the fuck is really going to be guarding some of the elite wing players on this team now.
No, it's a huge blow. I mean, and what you were saying about Joel Embiid is true, that we've seen this before, right? We've seen Ben Simmons go down and then Joel Embiid just be like, and put up MVP numbers. And that's always led to Dr. Pete being like, all right, these two guys cannot be like, Philly's got to trade one of them and build your offense solely around either Simmons or Embiid. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do see that again, where Joel Embiid comes out like, whatever it is, a house on fire. Is that? But a house can't really move, so I don't understand that one. But it comes out, guns ablaze.
But it goes up, right?
But it goes up. There. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we do see that kind of again. But it's just, man, I was watching them against the Wizards, and the fact that the Wizards, like the fact that was a game, is. Yeah, it makes me supremely confident with the Sixers staying as the 6th seed and the Celtics getting to play them in the first round. Like I initially was like, oh, I don't want that. But watching them play the Wizards, I was just like, all right, I'm fine. Like give me 7 rounds, give me a series of this, because especially with Simmons, if Simmons is out or still recovering, like you said, who's guarding Tatum, who's guarding Brown, who's guarding, like Thibault's going to get one of those guys and Kemba, but like you can't shut all those guys. And Gordo is finally kind of getting into his own. So anyways, it's just like, this is obviously a huge blow to the Sixers, and not that they had championship aspirations this year. I mean, or entering the bubble, I don't think that anyone thought that maybe they could suddenly become like the best team in the East. But this certainly just like, there's no way. I don't think that there's a way that they get out of the first round right now.
I am going to play devil's advocate and try to give you 2 optimistic stats.
Okay.
So this is just in the bubble. So far, Philadelphia is only 12th best in field goal percentage in the restricted area. That seems weird because Embiid has been doing well, right? And also like they should be better than that. So maybe a new geometry for the team will help them improve. They are 20th in 3-point attempts per game, but they're 7th in 3-point percentage. So again, if this 1 in 4 out shooting actually works, maybe their higher volume of 3-point attempts will actually be seen to be unlocking the team. Like all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, we're actually a pretty good shooting team when we're not so focused on making sure that Simmons can be in particular spots at particular times.
Yeah, no, that's a good devil's advocate. Those are good numbers and some hope for Philly fans. But I'm just looking at like the standings, like who of the top 4 seeds are they going to beat in order to move on? They're not beating the Bucks, they're not beating the Raptors, they're not beating the Celtics, and the Heat. Jimmy Butler is going to come for them like a house on fire, and so they're not going to beat them. Like I don't see, without Ben Simmons or even with a banged up Ben Simmons, I don't necessarily see a pathway for the Sixers to be able to tear off whatever 4 games in a series to win.
Like if the Bucks don't have Bledsoe and his defense, but they still have Giannis and Chris Middleton. And actually,
the Bucks lost to the Nets, so who knows what the fuck they are.
Yeah, but the Bucks, just like the Lakers and the Clippers, to a certain, like we spoke about this. Yeah, they don't care. They do not care. You can see it in their play. They're obviously not playing as well as we know they can. They've also been forced to use like weird lineups. The Clippers don't have Montrezl Harrell, and the Lakers are kind of shitty actually. But there's if everything clicked for Philadelphia and it seems like they could actually hit their ceiling as an Embiid team, then I do think that they're pretty dangerous, because Embiid at 100% is still arguably the best defensive player in the NBA. If he can play like, the Hall of Famer that everybody wanted him to be when he first came into the league, then that is going to be a force to be reckoned with. But that all depends on really whether Tobias Harris can make outside shots. If he can't, this team has no chance. So weirdly, Tobias is maybe the most important player right now.
Yeah. No, I mean, I just think in order for the Sixers to do anything of serious note, like Embiid's going to have to like go on a, Shaq-esque, I'm carrying this team too, where he's doing it on the defensive end and on the offensive end, which
correct.
I don't know. I don't know if that's I don't know if that, I mean, I
But
think
here's
I
the
think
thing.
he can
We've
do
all
that,
thought
but I
that
don't
he
think
could. Yeah, that's
right.
the
I
thing.
think he can do that, but I just don't know. I don't know if that's him alone is going to be able to. There's no one in the top 4 of the East that I feel like there's like a weakness or maybe they're a team that doesn't deserve to be like, if the Pacers bumped out the Heat from the 4th seed, then sure, then I think that's fair. But I don't think that that's going to happen. I mean, the Heat have been looking pretty good in my opinion.
Yeah, no, the Heat look great.
Fucking Duncan Robinson is shooting the goddamn lights out.
So only 2 teams in the bubble right now have 3 players who are shooting 40% or better from 3, and it's Miami and it's the Raptors. Each of those teams have 3 players that are shooting that well from outside. That's pretty nice. Yeah. I would also like to point out that Tobias Harris is shooting 6 attempts from outside per game, and he has a 39 3-point percentage. Jay Rich is attempting 5, and he has a 40%. If both of those guys up that by 2 or 3 and keep the ratios, all of a sudden this team is a little bit different. But I guess like Al Horford really, it depends on what he can do and how they put him out there.
Yeah. All right. Well, I feel like there are much more fun conversations to be had about the West.
Sure, like Miami. But Philadelphia is, to Boston people, obviously you're loving this. But Philadelphia is such a weird team and has been for so long. And we have so many hopes and dreams tied up with those two, with Simmons and Embiid, that it's almost impossible not to consider, like, they're a mediocre team by record.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Like
the potential is like super exciting. It's just Are we going to ever see it with those two sharing a court together? I don't know.
If this goes well without Simmons, I imagine they try to trade him for outside shooting and perimeter defense.
Right.
I don't know where that is though.
Natty, I want to steer the conversation to something that is very true and fond to our hearts on this show. And that is the Trailblazers. And we touched on them a little bit earlier, the Suns as well. I feel like the Trailblazers and the Suns, again, are the perfect argument for why the NBA should have just been like, here's the 8th seed for the Eastern and the West, and then we're going to take the best 6 teams by record, and we're going to cut them down the middle, 3 on each side. Because if the Suns were in the East, it would be so much more exciting to watch Devin Booker drain that shot over Paul George and Kawhi Leonard to win that game. I mean, the Suns are undefeated in the bubble, aren't they?
Yes.
Like, what is happening here? Like this,
and they have a full complement of players, which you can't say for Brooklyn, Orlando, or Washington.
Nor does anyone want to watch those teams play. Oh my God!
Dude,
it would be
actually,
so
wait
much
a second.
More fun.
You can't say it about Philly or Indiana either. It's only the 3 teams that actually. That's crazy. And the Bucks don't have Bledsoe.
Fucking garbage. The West.
That's amazing.
Oh my God! Can you imagine if the Suns were in the East and were actually had playoff contention? It just in a weird situation like this where they're like completely when you were able to bend all of the rules, right? The NBA should have done this. They should have done this because there's so much more exciting teams in the West. The having whatever it is, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams in the West playing for that 8th seed is stupid. It's so dumb because none of the 7 teams ahead of them were going to fall out. And so if you could have had 4 of those teams, if you could have had Suns, Spurs, Kings, Pelicans playing in the East for the 7th and 8th seed, and then the Grizzlies, Trailblazers, and Magic and Nets playing for the 7th or playing for the 8th seed in the West, like that would have been, then you just have Grizzly Trailblazers kind of battling it out. And you would have then Suns, Spurs, Kings, and Pelicans all battling for 2 now seeds in the East. It just would have been so much more enjoyable, and we would have gotten to see playoff basketball from the Suns. And I mean, hopefully we're gonna get playoff basketball from the Trailblazers, because I do think they're gonna lock up the 8th seed over the Grizzlies.
They just look so good right now. I love Portland.
They do.
They look way more complete. Melo is just setting screens.
Fucking Carmelo Anthony.
Like, he's a couple of years ago, he vowed that he wouldn't come off the bench and he wouldn't do all this sort of stuff. And like, he didn't like playing power forward when he was with the Knicks. He's doing everything to help the Blazers win. And even though he's not elite anymore, he's so experienced and he's so smart and he's so still kind of clutch. Like, he's willing to take big shots, you know? And that takes balls,
drains
and not
them
everyone
right
can
in
do
the
that.
face of the Rockets.
Yeah. And, you know, like, he's going to have some problems in the playoffs going up against the most elite wings in the game. But everybody does. Like, that's, you know.
Right. I mean, you're playing
that's
the
everybody's problem.
Yeah. 8 teams in the league.
Totally. And just to speak up for the Spurs, they're playing with the 5th highest pace so far in the bubble. These are young Spurs. Imagine if they had the Latvian Lasers still. But like, this is an interesting team, and they have length, and they have young guards, and they have legs. And if the NBA had just said, okay, the 8th seed in each conference is up for grabs by any team, you would have been able to end up with, you know, Portland and Phoenix getting into the playoffs.
Sure. That would have been a great way to do it. Yeah, that's been like, here's all, you know, all the same teams are invited. We're not doing Eastern Western conferences to play for that 8th seed play in. There are 2 playoff spots available. You know, it's up to you guys to win them, and then we'll just, you know, whatever, the best record goes to the East because the East sucks, and the worst record goes to the West as the 8th seed, or whatever, you know, whatever they decide to do. I mean, we talked about it on last week's podcast about these sneaky Trailblazers, because Dame Lillard is obviously Dame Lillard, and he and CJ McCollum are both been playing terrific in the bubble, and they're just you know, we know what they are. And you said Carmelo Anthony, obviously our boy, has been stepping right the fuck up, but also it's been huge to have Zach Collins and Nurkic back.
Yes, because
now they have these size. They have, you know, size and down and around the paint, but also playmakers from that position. And it's just like, this Blazers team, I really hope that, I mean, no hate to the Grizzlies, because the Grizzlies had a fucking awesome season, and, you know, Ja Morant's the future there, and you're in good hands. But give me a Trailblazers team that is shooting, like, this offense looks like it is ready to go. It's firing on all cylinders, and let's have them go up against a Lakers in the round 1 who are struggling to score buckets. Like, that give me that series all day, every day.
And Gary Trent Jr. is, let me see, he's averaging 8+ 3-point attempts per game. He's sinking 60% of them. That seems pretty fucking good. Like, Mario Hezonja, Super Mario, I remember when he came in and people were excited, but it just doesn't really seem like he should be there. I'd be playing Anthony Simons more, but he's there to eat minutes. That's fine. These are seeding games, and even though they have to win them, you also don't want to run people into the ground. The combination of Dame and CJ going up against the Lakers, like, the Lakers guards are maybe just bad. It's KCP, Alex Caruso, Danny Green has looked awful, but I believe in him. He's great. He's
got championship pedigree. He gets the benefit of the doubt.
And his defense, like, he'll be fine. But then there's Dion Waiters, who the other game took the ball up the court while LeBron was on the court, which was fucking weird. Rondo should be back eventually, but it's still like, the Lakers are their front court. And God bless Kuzma. He's been doing well. But, you know, it's LeBron and it's Brow. And if no one else can shoot, then they're going to fucking lose probably.
Yeah. let's get into the Lakers, where the Lakers have been struggling. But first, we're going to take a quick ad break. All right, we're back. So yeah, one of the stories to come out of the bubble, I feel like, has been the fact that the Lakers, their offense just hasn't been able to really kind of click into gear and get going. Individually, people have had good games. Anthony Davis has looked really good, but they're only shooting 25% from three as a team, which obviously not great. And we've talked about the names who are kind of contributing to that. It's I guess in my mind, this shouldn't be too much of a surprise. We've talked a lot about this. We know that the Lakers don't really have guard depth, but not only that, it's just like when you're relying on Dion Waiters and J.R. Smith to be like viable contributors, saviors. Yeah. Not really exactly where you want to be when you're trying to make a championship run.
The Lakers losing Avery Bradley is a little bit tough for them because they did try to structure their team so that their defense would be amazing, just absolutely incredible. Avery Bradley's a good defensive guard. And the fact that he's not there and that Danny Green isn't shooting well and that KCP, no one in the backcourt's doing well. But bright side, they probably can't do worse. So all of these numbers are most likely going to rise. Shooting rust is a known thing. People don't shoot as well when you come into a season. There's been a long break, so that's not too surprising. AD looking good is super important, I think. The entire team outside of AD, they can't sink their free throws. They take the third most free throw attempts in the bubble, and they have the second worst free throw percentage. Only the Lakers and the Pelicans are shooting under 75% from the line. That means you're losing vital points. Well, let me take that back. These are seeding games, so who cares? Correct. But they weren't a good free throw shooting team regular season either. Right. If they can't sink those, if they're going to go to the line that much, you have to be able to sink at more than that. It's unless your shooting goes through the roof, you're going to need those fucking points,
Yeah, totally. And I will say, I want to ask you, Natty, because I thought of this question when it was after, what game was it where AD kind of went off and was having his way. I forget what game. But
second game, maybe?
Yeah. I think so. It had me thinking, that wasn't against who was it? The Rockets? No.
They played the Clippers first.
No, it wasn't that game. They're playing the Rockets.
There's been so many games, and they started 1:30, and
oh, maybe it was the Raptors, and they still lost that game, or the Jazz. Anywho,
the Raptors look so fucking good.
The Raptors do look really fucking good. It was one of those games, but when AD went off, it might have been against the Jazz. I think that was the game that he kind of balled out. Is AD LeBron's best running mate? Is he the best player that LeBron's ever played with? I know, 2013, Dwayne Wade would like a word, but what do you think?
So the other possible answers to this question, I think, are Flash, Chris Bosh, Kyrie, Kevin Love, Zydrunas Ilgauskas.
No, we can stop at Kevin Love. We can stop at Kevin Love. I don't feel like we need to go into the
best player on
archives
Cavs
of the old Cavs. Right, exactly. We don't need to find the best player on Cavs 1.
So AD is definitely better than Kevin Love. That's just a true thing. Kyrie has made one of the most important shots in NBA history. AD is not. Bosh was an extremely good player and then had to lower his profile to join the Heat. And that was voluntary. He could have gone and chased stats or just stayed in Toronto and chased stats. But Bosh was a seriously good fucking player. And as soon as they moved him to center, really, that team made sense and took off. D-Wade is one of the 10 best guards of all time. And he's a Hall of Famer.
Sure. Yep.
And here's the thing that really separates AD, I think, from it's the accomplishments. So how old do you think Anthony Davis is?
All right, I'm not looking at Basketball Reference. What is he? I feel like he's probably younger than me, so I'll say he's 27.
That is exactly right. He's 27 years old.
Bingo.
How many times do you think he's gone to the playoffs?
0, right? I don't think the Pels have ever made it to the playoffs.
No, they've gone twice.
Oh, okay.
So they went in 14-15 and 17-18.
Okay.
Anthony Davis might have overall the most talent out of all of the players LeBron has played with. I think you can argue that with D Wade. But he doesn't have any of the accomplishments. Like, he underwhelms when you consider how much talent you think, or he used to anyway, how much talent.
Sure.
Like, he didn't bring the New Orleans Pelicans teams together, you know? Like, they sometimes looked better without him, or at least played better without him when he was injured. That's not all the time, and he was on some shitty teams. But the team 2 years ago, when he demanded the trade, seemed pretty good. And
yeah,
it's hard for me to say that he's the best running mate LeBron's ever had when we still don't have any accomplishments. Talent-wise, I would still choose Flash, Dwayne Wade over the Brow. But, give Anthony Davis 3 more years and maybe I'll change my mind. If they win this year, or if they even have a good showing, and if he just seems to be one of the top 5 players in the league over the next couple of years, without a doubt, then maybe I'll change my mind. But I think you have to stay with Dwayne Wade.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. I think you're ultimately right, because while accomplishments are also key into it, let me bring up some D Wade stats.
But D Wade had Shaq early on.
D Wade did have Shaq,
but he was also like when LeBron came to Miami, people considered him and Wade like almost 1A and 1B. It was Batman and Robin, like these are co-equals.
And that was that was like the big thing for D Wade, was D Wade being like, look, I will let LeBron be the face of my team. And that was, I mean, how many other studs at the top of their game are going to do that? I feel like that was the key ingredient to like making those Heat teams work, was Dwayne Wade being like willing to be 1B to LeBron in his own city.
All 3 of those players had to make changes to their game in order for the Heat to truly blossom. I mean, Chris Bosh had to change his game
entirely.
Yeah. D Wade and LeBron kept going back and forth, and the transition, I think, was like sort of hand in hand, because LeBron had to change the way he played too. He had to start taking over. He couldn't keep deferring.
Right.
Their dream of 6, 7, 8, 9 championships was instantly destroyed. And it was because they just didn't know how to play together as well as they could. And then Dwayne Wade slowly started to decline, and LeBron continued to ascend and really became a different player. Like when he went back to Cleveland, he was a completely different player than when he went to Miami. And that was really, him learning to be the distributor, the scorer, like everything on the team. He runs the show, and it took Miami and competing with Dwayne Wade to really show him that. So I think it's really hard to change. But the thing with Anthony Davis is that, like, obviously LeBron's in charge of the team,
right,
and he's just happy to be there, and no one disputes how talented he is. Like, no one thinks he has a ceiling.
Do you have AD over Kyrie?
Yeah, of course, for sure.
Good.
Do
you have Kevin Love over Kyrie?
Healthy, no, I don't. But everybody, when that trade happened, everyone was like, "Oh, do you really, LeBron and K-Love? Really? Do you need that? Isn't there a better?"
I would like to quickly put some respect in Kevin Love's name. Kevin Love was a fucking phenomenal player with
Absolutely.
the Timberwolves when that trade was made. Like, I understand that he's now just like this bloated contract that no one wants anymore. And yes, his play has taken a hit. And that play, like, I mean, when anyone has to play with LeBron, obviously you have to, your game changes because you're no longer the alpha dog, especially when you're, changing from a team where you were to a team where you were not. But this is like, I mean, the man before he got traded in the year before, 26 points and let me think, 12 rebounds?
12, okay.
Like 26 and 12.
All the outlet passes and like all the ridiculous. Yeah.
4 assists, and he was shooting almost 40% from 3 that year. Like the guy was, I would say Cleveland by far won that trade, despite giving up the Andrew Wiggins, who everyone was like, he's the next coming of LeBron, don't trade him. Like, that was an even trade that people thought at the time, and it clearly has not played out that way. Like, I would like people to just, when they look at Kevin Love, to remember that Kevin Love was and still is. He's certainly a better basketball player than I will ever aspire to be at right now. But like, dude, no, you're right. I could score 17 points in the NBA.
The thing about K-Love is that he was entirely correct. He got a chip and he made a ton of fucking money.
Hell yeah.
He knew what he was getting into.
He played the game right. When you're going to play with LeBron, like this is how it works. It's like when free agents sign with the Patriots. It's like, I'm going to get a championship. I'm going to have to kind of like change what I'm looking for maybe a little bit, but it's all going to be worth it. And then he makes a fuck ton of money. Good for him.
Like, I don't think Kevin Love or his agent anticipated how bad things got so quickly after LeBron left. Like, the team just doesn't seem to be well run, and they didn't really let the GM do what the GM of the Cavs then is the GM, what's his name, David Griffin, of the Pelicans now. And, they did one of the best trades in recent history with the Lakers. But the thing is, it's tough to play with the LeBron because you're, of course, not going to be the alpha dog. And I think that's actually a good reason for why AD might end up being the best running mate with LeBron, is it's because he never really felt like the alpha
as an alpha.
dog.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that helps explain why
I don't mean that he's quiet. I don't mean that, he's like Tim Duncan or anything like that. It's just that, like, he didn't seem to really raise the Pelicans the way that you would think an alpha dog would, And now that he's with one of the 5 best players who's ever lived and a guy who, he's playing for LeBron, really, it's maybe that fits a little bit better. Like, he knows what his role is. He also knows that he gets to grow into inheriting the team. So there's no real gray area. Like, he and LeBron seem to be fairly simpatico. It seems to be a really good pairing so far.
Which is super fucking scary for the rest of the NFL or NBA.
But on the other hand, all their money's tied up in their front court. And it's like, okay, well, what premier guard do you think the Lakers could realistically get?
I mean, everyone's been it's Bradley Beal has been the popular combo, but you're doing a trade there, and I don't know what the Lakers have remaining to offer. I mean, I've heard this Kyle Kuzma guy is really good and that everyone wants him.
Yeah, Kuzma's in a tough spot too, because he went from playing with Ingram and Lonzo to playing with Bron and AD, and he's trying his best. He is absolutely trying his best. He looks pretty good. I don't know. Like, if I was his agent, I don't know what I'd be telling him. Would I be telling him just, like, sit tight, like, you play for the fucking Lakers? Like, eventually, like, in the next
go win
2-3
a championship.
Years, yeah. Because you don't want to end up, playing on the Wizards for nothing.
Well, and I feel like that's the thing, too, that a lot of people... maybe not a lot of people, that often gets overlooked or often gets maybe diminished, is just how hard it is to win a championship. And like, if you have a chance to win it, stick around and win that championship, because it does worlds of difference to how your career is perceived, regardless how you got that championship. Like that will forever be on your resume. So like, if Kuz wants to stay on the Lakers for whatever, 2-3 more years, try to get at least one ship, and then go to a team, and then we kind of see him finally figure out what his game is and see an offense that like, you know, works with him, and a team that's like, you're our guy or you're our second guy, let's go. And then he puts together a good career. Like, great. That career is going to look so much better with the one championship than if you're like, let's go get max money now. And you put together a great career, but you're like you said, you're on the Wizards and you're getting paid a fuck ton of money, but you're not winning anything.
Yeah, one of the reasons that I think we don't feel that way about Barkley as much, like he never won, but we never really thought of him as like, he didn't play for pathetic teams. Philly and Phoenix were really good teams, and he was an MVP. Like he was great. It's difficult. It's so difficult to win a ring in the NBA. I mean, just look at the history of the sport. Like, less than a third of the teams have ever won. And most of the good teams are good for like 5 to 15 years. You know, it's like, if you have the best player, odds are you're going to at least be in the mix if you have, you know, a running mate at least. But it's just still so hard. And there's only been one team in NBA history that has won it all without having a max player, and that's the Pistons. But that was a team that just sort of happened, you know?
Are you a Pistons fan?
I am a Pistons fan. And the reason I bring that up is because that shows you that it's incredibly difficult to just like cobble something together and like ride momentum. You know, it's not like baseball where it's like, if you get hot in the last month and then win the wild card, like you can just go through and mow people down. It's not as well. Football used to be a little bit more random. It's been less so since Bill Belichick started. But it's almost impossible to win in the NBA. It really, really, really is. That's why it was such a big deal for LA to get LeBron, because he ups your chances by a level of magnitude that almost no other player, but AD might be one of those players. And so if you have two of those guys, along with perimeter defense, thank you, Danny Green, and hopefully better shooting, then you should be able to have a measure of success. It's not a guarantee, obviously, but you have to be one of those players in order to be successful. And, you know, is Kuzma going to be one of the best 15 players in the NBA? Probably not. So, yeah, you should stick around with the guys that will help you win, and you will make your money later. Also, LeBron has gotten his people paid. Like, he doesn't throw people under the bus. He makes sure people get made. Tristan Thompson. Like, fine. That's maybe one of the worst things about LeBron GM is that he does pay people, but we shouldn't think of it that way. Obviously, pay people.
Obviously, get paid for what you do. Before we go, do you have any final thought that you want to make sure you voice about the bubble so far?
Okay, let's talk about teams that are shooting well, since it seems like the rust has been on for a bunch of the contenders. Only 6 teams are shooting at least 40% from the field overall and 40% from 3. One of those teams is the Sixers, by the way. It's also Portland, Boston, the Spurs, the Clippers, and the Raptors. They're doing pretty well. Let's focus on Boston and Toronto real fast.
Oh, if you must, if you insist.
Dude, like Gordon Hayward at the end of games with that free throw shooting seems absolutely fucking crazy. I don't want to talk about Kemba's arthritis. Let's talk about closing lineups. Do you think that Tatum will be playing center in this bubble? In the playoffs?
I don't know. I kind of hopes. I don't know. Like Brad, that's the thing. You hit the nail on the head. Like that's what the Celtics need to figure out. Is like this has been the issue at times. Like this was the issue with the Heat game. Was just like when the Celtics have their 5 best players out there, things aren't quite clicking yet. And so that's going to be, they need to figure out what is their crunch minutes. Like we need to win this game, final 5 minutes, who's on the court, get us to win the game. Cause the thing is what you're saying is true, that like, for me personally, that one of those guys has to be Marcus Smart. And you live and die by Marcus taking the final 3. But if you put Marcus there, that means one of Hayward or Tatum is playing center. I mean, we've talked about Marcus playing center too, but so that's like, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that actually pans out and works for them, because of the fact that, I mean, Daniel Theis has looked pretty darn good in this bubble series so far. So it could be something that like maybe your crunch minute is you do have a traditional center with Theis, and you're running that for up until like 2 minutes left, and then you're throwing in Smart, or you're running it up until 2 minutes, and then you're putting Theis in as a traditional big. Cantor's also looked pretty good, especially on the offensive board. So I think there's still a lot to figure out in terms of lineup there. The nice thing is that the Celtics, like that third seed is pretty comfortably theirs. And with the Sixers, I mean, we know the Magic and Nets are a train wreck. With Ben Simmons missing for the Sixers and the Pacers also missing people, like, you know, I don't think the Celtics really need to figure their shit out until round 2. But it's going to be interesting to see what the final kind of the final lineup matchup is going to be.
Like, I kind of feel like Cantor closing with the offensive rebounds and the fact that he's not a good interior defender means that like teams might try to attack that in the last moments of the game rather than shooting threes, especially if you have great perimeter defense around them. Like but Cantor, I mean, you want defense when you close. So you have to have Marcus out there and you have to have Jalen out there.
Right.
You have to have Tatum out there because he's the best player on the team.
Right. And you have to have Kemba. And Gordo has looked really good to start the bubble. And so I feel like you kind of have to have him too.
I sort of feel like Kemba's the least or the most expendable because really Gordon Hayward and Marcus Smart, like all of them can distribute the ball. So like you don't actually need a traditional point guard.
Right.
His scoring would, I mean, that's tough to replicate, but he's also an undersized guard, you know, like maybe
the defensive thing is worrisome.
So maybe Kemba doesn't get to close. Like maybe he's like your opener, you know, like you play the shit out of the first and third quarters.
Sure.
And then near the half, we go with our best defensive lineup. But I don't know. It's going to be
maybe you go Smart, Brown, Hayward, Tatum, Theis.
Like you literally have to have Smart, Tatum, and Brown out there. You have to.
Right. You can't have a closing lineup without those 3 guys.
It would be crazy if they didn't do that.
Yeah. Nah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be, and I think that's like for the East, that's the kind of thing that you have to find, right? You have to find how these like aspects of these teams that they need to work on and like watch that for enjoyment. Whereas the West, I mean, the same is true for like the top seed, like the Lakers, since they've already locked up the 1 seed. Like it's going to be interesting to see kind of how they handle that and how their lineup plays. But like the West is where the action is happening and where the excitement is going to be with the Suns, Trailblazers, and Grizzlies all battling for that 8 seed. Can you imagine? Like it's crazy to me to say that the Suns like have a playoff chance. You know, like when we walked into this bubble, could you picture the Suns winning out all of their games? I don't even still know if that would be good enough to give them the 8th seed, but damn, that would be glorious.
Memphis is 32-37, Portland's 31-38, and Phoenix is 30-39. It's absolutely doable.
It's fucking
and
awesome.
They look, it's like Mikal Bridges is doing well. I mean, Rubio, DeAndre Ayton had a good game today. they're a fun young team, and it
they
would
just
be
beat
super
the
fucking
Pacers today.
Yeah, and
Oh my god, I love it.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, it's great that we get to see them. Like,
Yeah.
I'm glad this 22 game notion resulted in us getting
It would
to
have been
see
like,
some
I'm glad
awesome
that
Phoenix games.
Yep. So let's see. Let's look at it before we go. This is the last thing we'll touch on, just because it's so much fun to talk about. Suns' final 4 games are Heat, Thunder, Sixers, Mavericks. Trailblazers' final 4 games are, or 5 games, excuse me. They have Nuggets today. They're playing that Thursday night. We're recording this Thursday, but you'll listen to it Friday. So they're playing, that game will have already happened. And then their final 4 games, Clippers, Sixers, Mavericks, Nets. And then the Grizzlies schedule, let me see what they've got left. Grizzlies have got Thunder, Raptors, Celtics, Bucks. See, I think the Grizzlies are doomed.
Yes.
So that comes down to Trailblazers, Suns. Who's winning more games between Trailblazers, Suns? And
being able to have those last 2 games be Orlando and Brooklyn.
Mavericks,
pretty nuts.
not Magics.
Oh, sorry. Oh,
but
well,
still,
that's less cool.
still finishing with the Nets. Right. That's I mean, don't count your chickens before they hatch.
Yeah,
but that's
Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot. Like,
that's seems like a free win.
Sank some shit.
The 76ers seems like, the Clippers, who knows? Who knows? The Suns have already taken care of that. I don't know. It's going to be really fun. These are all both these 2 teams are going to be must-watch television. I mean, they already are, and they're going to continue to be for the rest of the bubble.
Yeah, I'm trying to watch all these Spurs games too. And then, Sacramento, if Bogdan Bogdanovic is going to have a career night all the time and De'Aaron Fox just going warp speed, like all of a sudden it's more interesting than I expected. I mean, all of these teams are still in it. The Pelicans could still make it. All of them could still get into at least the playoff game. It is.
If only they were seated in the East.
Yeah, and the thing is
the theme of the podcast.
These teams, like some teams are do or die and are playing every game like a playoff game, and then other teams aren't. And they're being not lethargic, but like maybe we're not playing at 100%. And so it's just awesome to be able to watch Portland like play for their fucking lives as hard as they possibly can. And then sometimes they're going to be playing a team who's like, yeah, whatever. He'll play.
We'll let you do
minutes.
that. You go ahead.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, like the Clips game could be that. They're playing the Nuggets tonight. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, so it's been good so far, and most importantly, everyone's healthy.
Everyone's healthy.
So knock wood, this has been good. Let's keep it going.
Yeah, 100%. Keep enjoying basketball, everyone. That's all we got. Make sure to subscribe to the Fake Teams podcast. We are wherever you find your podcast: iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher. That's how you'll not only get us fantasy basketball, but also our fantasy football and fantasy baseball shows. Follow us on Twitter at @TheLong2. Natty, stay safe, my friend, and until next week.
You do the same, man. Be healthy. Let's go mellow.
Yeah, baby.